The year was 1988. CD players and the original Nintendo consoles were the must-have technology of that time. There were no smartphones, and hardly anyone had any kind of mobile phone. And if you did, it was as big as a brick. Meanwhile, cable television was starting to take off, transforming how we get our news and entertainment.
It was that very year of 1988 that D.C.'s then mayor, Marion Barry, and the chair of the Cable Commission at the time, William Lightfoot, wanted to make sure that with cable's emergence came some powerful public benefits. For decades, DC TV has opened its studio doors to the public to make the industry more accessible.
And now, for the first time, DCTV is launching original programming to capture the wonderful things that are happening within our communities all across the district and in the greater DMV.
This is District Life.
First, if you're a fan of the Broadway hit Hamilton, we are revisiting the room where it happens. Local historians tell us how the Founding Fathers brokered a deal to place the nation's capital beside the Potomac.
Also stick with us to hear what South African artists did with DC's own go-go music. A new project is dropped in collaboration with a local nonprofit that specializes in STEAM, or science, technology, engineering, arts, and math.
We've packed even more in this half-hour show. Later, we're giving you an inside look at an art installation in Union Market that challenges price gouging in the healthcare industry. Here in Washington, D.C., you can enjoy the richness of various cultures, the beauty of the Potomac, and dozens of historical landmarks, including incredible monuments and amazing memorials. But do you know how D.C. became the heart of the federal government?
According to historical accounts, there was much debate about where to place the nation's seat of government. So we decided to do a little digging and spoke to some local historians who gave us insight about what was taking place before the 1800s.
In June of 1790, Jefferson, Madison, and Hamilton have a dinner at Jefferson's house in New York. And he's bringing them together really to sort of hash out two issues that are facing the nation. One is the issue of American debt, which Hamilton is proposing could be addressed through the idea of assumption, or the federal government taking on the state's debts, right? So that's one issue. The other issue is where the seat of government is actually going to be.
Southerners give us support for assuming the debt for the Revolutionary War, and we will give you support, this is a Northern bloc, for having a capital in the South. That's the deal. It's brokered, and soon after that you get the Residency Act, which essentially says that the capital will be in the South, somewhere between the Anacostia and about 100 miles north on the Potomac River.
The founders went to the edge of that limit. They literally drew a 10-mile square, and that was the district. And so Maryland ceded about 68 acres, Virginia ceded 20 some odd acres, and the Potomac River accounted for the rest.
Georgetown, Alexandria, and Washington City are placed under the control of Congress and the President. And then the rest of the land that's within the borders of the District of Columbia that is unincorporated, that becomes the portion that had been part of Maryland becomes Washington County, and the portion that had been part of Virginia becomes Alexandria County.
The eligible citizens, meaning white male citizens with property, the eligible citizens of the city were allowed to vote in federal elections. Those who lived on the Virginia side voted in Virginia federal elections for Virginia senators and representatives. Those on the Maryland side voted for Maryland representatives and senators.
After 1800, when Congress comes to town, that ends because the Organic Act is passed in that year. And the Organic Act effectively says Congress can pick up the power of exclusive legislation.
From the beginning, Washington residents complained. They thought this was tyranny. They talked about no taxation without representation. This was the battle cry of the revolution. And these were people who lived through the revolution, many of whom fought in the revolution.
1802, there are the first municipal charter for Washington City is put into place, and so limited rights are restored to white males.
And so by the time you get to 1820, people are electing not just a council, but also a mayor. It's not just landed white males who are voting after that period. It's also white men who have no money or have no property. And so you essentially have a white male democracy during that time on the local level, but DC residents all the way through to today still don't have voting representation in Congress, whether it's during the antebellum period or now.
Those interviews and much more are part of DC TV's multi-part series about the history of Washington, D.C. and the city's fight for statehood, premiering soon. Coming up, D.C. is home to the federal government, of course, but it's also home to a thriving local government as well. In just a few moments, my interview with Dr. Faith Gibson Hubbard, the former director of the D.C. Mayor's Office of Community Affairs.
My client was waiting for me to post the final draft for this project online. Then the phone buzzed. The person told me I had 45 minutes to pay up or my electricity would be cut off. No electricity, no internet. They told me to get one of those prepaid credit cards, so I did it.
If you receive a call threatening to disconnect a utility service, stop. Hang up and call the provider back using the number on your bill to verify, and contact the Public Service Commission or the police to report scammers. Fight utility scams. The power is yours.
Dr. Faith Gibson Hubbard is on a powerful mission. For the past several years, she has worked to ensure that families in and around D.C. receive quality education for their children.
Not only has she served as the director of the D.C. Mayor's Office of Community Affairs, she has also been a dedicated leader in her role as the executive director of Thrive by 5, where she worked to ensure the district's youngest learners are well taken care of. Here's my interview with Dr. Gibson Hubbard about her work to help others in the community. Hello, Dr. Faith Gibson Hubbard. Welcome to District Life. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
All right, great. It's wonderful to have you here. Now, you have served in various roles within the D.C. government, with some of those roles dealing directly with advocating for quality education and a focus on early childhood education in particular. What inspires you to continue to work so hard and push for quality education for our youngest learners?
Yeah, so it's our community that really inspires me, and the power that I see within our community and with families. I think a lot of times as a parent, you get a bit beat down and you don't remember the power that you have and that you possess in being able to be the best advocate for your child. And so for me, it was remembering when I was in the classroom and all of the things that I felt like my students should have had. And I taught middle school. So by the time they got to me, there had been many times that them and their families were passed over for resources that they should have. And so my continuous drive each day around doing this work is within community and within families, and within knowing that they are truly the best advocate, and all they really need are the tools to be able to do that, and the resources that we have here in the District of Columbia that should allow them to be able to thrive and for their children to thrive.
Yes, that is very much needed. Now, can you talk about some of the positions you have held within the D.C. government and how you helped promote programs for mothers and young children?
Absolutely. So I'll start first, even before I got into district government, and it was within a civic organization within my own community. And I think that's where drive really happened. So I first started out as a middle school teacher. And then when I moved to the District of Columbia for love, I met my husband. We moved to the Ward 5 community, and I got involved pretty quickly with our Ward 5 Council on Education. And each ward has a council on education that's focused on public schools. And I was able to meet so many amazing advocates within our community that have been holding up this organization and also holding up the foundation of education within our ward. So that's really where it started. And my advocacy and mentorship that I received there led to other roles. So I was appointed as the first Chief Student Advocate for the District of Columbia. Wow. And I led the Office of the Student Advocate in the State Board of Education. I established that office in 2015, and that office is still around and designed to help families navigate the complexities of public education in the district. I ran that office for 4 years, but also had the opportunity to serve for about 9-10 months as the interim ombudsman for public education, leading the Office of the Ombudsman for Public Education, which helps families resolve complaints and concerns with schools. But within both of those roles, what I realized, the same as when I was just mentioning earlier, families have often been missing opportunities to make sure that they can have the very best for them and their children. And so what I really wanted to make sure to do was to figure out how could I lean in even more to the spaces where families could thrive. And that was a great opportunity that was given to me in being able to establish and lead Thrive by 5 DC, which was focused on maternal health through early learning and development. That is really where you find the most impactful needs for families to get them started in the best way. And so I was really honored to lead that work for the last almost 3 years. And then I moved over to the Mayor's Office of Community Affairs, which really brings it all together in one big package.
And as the former director of the DC Mayor's Office of Community Affairs, you supervised various departments within the mayor's office that deal with religious, racial, cultural, and ethnic groups, and those with various sexual orientations. Why do you feel it's important to work with various groups, and how can doing so help to improve education across the board?
So with all of that, I think what's really important is that we realize that education is one component of what makes communities amazing. So we can't just have education at the core, but we have to look at things more holistically. And the Mayor's Office of Community Affairs allowed me to be able to look at that in a much more holistic fashion, where I could say, wow, there's the Mayor's Office of Latino Affairs. How can we make sure that our neighbors who speak Spanish as a first language have the resources that they need, not only to lean into education, but also housing, workforce, other community resources. I think it gave me a much more holistic view because there are 12 offices in community affairs, from women's policy initiatives, veterans affairs, LGBTQ affairs, African American affairs. There's so much in this space. And so I think it really helped me get a much more bird's eye view of what really makes Washington, D.C. the amazing city that it is, and how we need to really think in very unique and diverse ways around what communities need. And so I was just so thankful to have that opportunity, because you think that education is more being a real specialist in a space, right? You want to help kids get their academic needs. But what you realize is that everything else is what makes academics possible, not only for the child, but also for the family. And so working in community affairs allows you to see that entire arc of what's important to families.
Well, Dr. Faith Gibson Hubbard, it's been great speaking with you. Thank you so much for joining me and for the incredible work that you are doing. And please keep it up. It is much needed in the community.
Thank you so much, Lisa. I really appreciate this time.
Thank you. Wow, can you say amazing? That Dr. Faith Gibson Hubbard really is on a mission with quality education as her focus.
And the entire concept of Thriving by 5 is completely brilliant.
Absolutely.
Brilliant. DC's Swaliga Foundation is no stranger to education either. For many years, the nonprofit has been partnering with organizations in South Africa as part of a cultural exchange.
Participants tell us that despite the thousands of miles and an ocean between us, South Africans and Americans are more alike than we are different. Here's a taste of the latest project that the Swaliga Foundation worked on.
The Swaliga Foundation is a nonprofit based in Washington, D.C. We specialize in STEAM education. That's science, technology, engineering, arts, and math.
We're going to go ahead and get started. You want to get started?
Let's go ahead and get started, man. We are here at Culture Coffee 2 for the official album release party, Tale of Two Cities, hashtag TO2C.
What we have been doing was collaborating with different artists that are from this area and collaborating artists South Africa.
After I sat down and thought about what Swaliga is, or what A Tale of Two Cities should be about, and I thought, why not use two up-and-coming artists? And boy, oh boy, I hit it on the nail.
Oh, how they covered up our roots, but through the cracks we grow.
When you're even just making a beat, right, that's critical thinking. It's the engineering design process. The important part about putting out quality music and quality entertainment, you have to understand that technical side. So that's why a big part of our program, even in this process, one of my former students actually made a track that's on the album. you know? So we're always kind of sharing our process with them and including them wherever we can.
Intergenerational connectivity is what we have. So it's very important for the elders to connect with the young people and as well as the community. So that's why this Swaliga movement, the project, and just STEAM education is very, very important, and we just keep it together and just try to keep it moving. So.
You gotta take this thing overseas. Oh Lord, this vibe done travel across the water. Party with the tribe, we gon' give them what they order. Oh Lord, this vibe done made it across the border. Party with the tribe, we gon' give them what they order. Rockin' with the tribe, say Swaliga, baby. Swaliga, baby. Swaliga, baby.
We have what you would call a collection of polyrhythmic sounds, okay? Some sounds from go-go, R&B, hip-hop, jazz. We have a little bit of everything in this particular album, and it displays through all of these projects based on, you know, all of our different artists that we're working with, you know. So.
A Tale of Two Cities is basically just here to show people that as much as we are living across seas and oceans, we are not different. We go through the same struggles, just different formatting. You know, we are more similar than we think we are.
This is the Swaliga Foundation's second album. Switching gears now, we are so happy to be bringing you our premiere episode of District Life, part of DCTV's mission to bring meaningful media to our neighbors through original programming. Much of that programming, including this production today, takes place at Brooks Mansion in Brookland.
DCTV was founded in 1986. We began broadcasting with one cable channel, serving our first members out of a small cubicle in the basement of a DuPont Circle apartment building.
In the early 2000s, we moved to our current home, the Brooks Mansion in Brookland, and it has quite a rich history. Built by Colonel Jehiel Brooks and his wife, Anne Margaret Queen, the mansion was the center of their 246-acre estate known as Bel Air.
And in 1887, the property was sold and divided to form the present-day northeast neighborhood of Brookland. The mansion house and 2 acres were sold to Elizabeth Varney, who operated a boarding house. Then, in 1891, the Maris brothers purchased the Brooks Mansion. They added a wing to the house in 1894, then sold it to the Benedictine sisters.
The mansion was owned by various Catholic orders for educational purposes until 1970, when the Washington Metropolitan Area Transit Authority purchased it. They actually threatened to demolish it for a metro station parking lot. The city then purchased the building to preserve it as a Category 2 national landmark before DCTV moved in to broadcast your voice to the city.
The district has often been described as a melting pot of characters. This week, our very own Carmen Stanley hit the pavement talking to people to get their opinion on DC's statehood. And from what I hear, she had quite an interesting time. Let's see what the people had to say, or in some cases, didn't say.
Someone's gonna talk. We just have to find out who. Oh, you guys are enjoying your coffee. I'm gonna ask anyway, because that's the type of person I am. Either you'd be interested in coming on camera and talking about DC statehood?
No, thank you.
Alrighty. Ma'am. Hi. Would you like to be on camera to talk about DC statehood?
About DC what?
Statehood.
Oh, statehood.
Yes. What does taxation without representation mean?
Just in general, or me to me?
That like the DC residents are paying taxes and they're not being represented in Congress.
That kind of like is the driving force, you know, we see that's kind of our motto, you see it on the license plates, and when you distill it down to that, it just, it doesn't seem fair for the people here, you know.
How do you feel about Congress people from other states having a say on DC policy making?
Yeah, I don't think that's a good idea for other congressmen that obviously don't live here, don't know what DC's all about, to have a voice.
Yeah, I think that's something that a lot of DC citizens find pretty frustrating.
They're not truly DC residents, so they don't really understand everything that's happening here compared to people who are actually living here.
What would you name DC if it became a state?
That's a good question.
I was gonna say Washington, but we have a Washington, so Washington Jr.
Washington Jr. JR. I love it.
I kind of like the district of Columbia part. I could see them changing, but the district part I like.
You like the district part? Is that like the Hunger Games in you?
Oh, a little bit, I guess.
We'll just ask you how you feel about it. What would you name the, if it became a state, what would you name it?
Oh, like if DC was like its own state.
Yeah, and then how do you know? Lastly, how do you feel about the possibility of DC becoming a county of Maryland?
I think it's a tough one. I feel like I'd rather be our own state. If we were absorbed into Maryland. I feel like being a DC resident, we kind of have our jokes about Maryland drivers, so that might be a tougher sell, but, I don't know about that one.
Can I hear one of these jokes about the drivers?
Oh, just whenever you hear somebody driving poorly or you see, like, a stop sign that's been knocked over, you kind of assume
that it's a Maryland driver.
Only Carmen can get those types of reactions.
Only Carmen. Only Carmen. I can't wait to see where she'll be next time.
Yes.
Like statehood, the future of the U.S.'s healthcare industry is both a local and national issue. How two organizations are prioritizing the health and safety of their communities next.
My life was in shambles, and I was trying to figure out how to pick up the pieces. AA not only keeps me sober, it helps me live a much better life. If you have a problem with alcohol, contact AA. It works for me.
I'm Sienna Marcellin from So Others Might Eat, helping to restore hope and dignity in those experiencing homelessness in the district. And you're watching DC TV.
If you've been around Union Market in the past few months, you've likely seen a mural that says "Power to the Patients." Our District Life team was there filming it when it was being painted this past summer and got the chance to speak with local DC band Crush Funk, which was supporting the event with its big brass sound.
Hey DC TV, this is Kevin Moore with Power to the Patients. We're here at Union Market. We have painted Shepard Fairey's mural for Power to the Patients, raising awareness for patient rights. Hospitals must show us prices. It's in the law. We're here with Crush Funk Brass.
We are here today with the Power to the Patients movement, and we're providing a little backdrop with some original music and some vibes. Pretty much a movement has been set in place for the medical field to post their prices for healthcare. If you've got to go in for a cold or something, you want to know how much you're spending as opposed to getting stuck with a wicked bill. And in the moment that they seized an opportunity to reap benefits from funding for COVID tests, that's not what we needed. And some people couldn't afford to get the tests, which was horrible because it put us back a couple steps. And this is something nationwide here. So, I know we've all had a moment where we looked at something and just been taken breathless, honestly. So that's why we're out here. We're just trying to drum up some of the awareness to what's happening.
And Crush Funk revealed today, in addition to the Shepard Fairey mural, the Power to the Patients theme song.
We are what we got. We need your voices. Procedures and shots. We're raising up our voices for everyone to hear. Power to the patients. Our message is clear. Power to the patients. We are what we got. We need your voices. Procedures and shots. We're raising up our voices for everyone to hear. Ready? Power to the patients.
And so, yes, we're a band, but we give back because that's what's needed. We need to have a connection, and people need to be connected. So whatever is going on in life, communication is key. So that's why we're out here, to bring people together, to stay grounded, and to give back.
Wow, what a beautiful mural.
Absolutely beautiful. And I was ready to get down the second line with the band for Power to the Patients. It was so good to me.
Work it out now. All right, speaking of an organization that is dedicated to the community, since 2007, Common Good City Farm has been planting seeds of healthy and sustainable living into the lives of Washingtonians.
The nonprofit offers programs to educate all ages about gardening, cooking healthy meals, and how to care for the planet. We sat down to chat with one of their volunteers who, at the age of 19, is committed to working and maintaining urban gardens for her community.
For a long time in my life, I was only eating fast food. I didn't feel good, you know. It was taking a toll on my mental and physical health, and I just wanted a chance to get my hands dirty and be closer to nature in a way. Gardening, farming has always been a restorative experience for me. But then when I found out more about Common Good City Farm and all the programs, classes, workshops that they offer, I was like, I have to get in here. I have to volunteer here. They have this program called the City Farmer Program, which is 12 weeks long. And they teach you things about harvesting, planting, weeding, everything that you need to keep a farm running, especially an urban farm. And it warms my heart, you know, to see kids starting that young to learn about health, wellness, and fresh organic produce and how to make good stuff with it, and that it's important to have in your life and to care about, you know. It's really something beautiful. I just think it's so amazing that this farm and other urban farms are teaching people more about fresh and organic produce, how to cook with it, how to make delicious things, offering farmers markets, and even just other stuff. They offer a herbalism program. You can make your own home apothecary through this farm. Everyone should know about all these things that are readily available, you know, right here.
With the help of great ward warriors like Brooke and other volunteers, they say they will continue to educate DC residents for years to come.
On the next District Life, we'll have highlights and interviews with performers from the recent Deaf Enlightenment and Arts Festival that took place in late September at the Kennedy Center.
If a deaf person is watching one of the performers, they realize that they can also perform and become an artist themselves.
Well, that's going to do it for this episode of District Life. Tell us what you thought about today's show by finding us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at YourDCTV.
And if you know someone in your neighborhood who's doing extraordinary things, they could be featured on one of our episodes. Be sure to send us their story on social media. We'll see you next time.